Good morning, viewers. Thanks for tuning in to SS Customs. You are watching episode 1 of our 50 mile per hour Easy Go project. You're looking at the front end. As you can see, it's been heavily modified. I'm going to do this video on the front end, and I'm going to give you a quick little walk around. And oh my, what do we have here? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We've got an Easy Go TXT with a V-twin big block. Look at that. I want to show you this install kit. It's real nice. You notice the frame system that's underneath the motor. This is a bolt-on kit you can buy that houses pretty much any kind of engine you want to put in an Easy Go, or a golf cart for that matter. It's some minor modification. It allows you to use the original rear axle. I happen to put some disc brakes on this unit. You can see the control arms that replace the leaf springs, and it comes with some coilover shocks. Really sweet setup. And then of course, whatever motor you want to put in, you can do that. But this is for episode 2. So I'm going to focus on the front end. And if you notice as I step back how wide it is. When you're talking about a cart going in excess of 40 miles an hour, you definitely want to widen its stance. And this particular setup does just that. This is an independent A-arm suspension setup with coilovers, completely adjustable. We can adjust caster, camber, toe. We can adjust the ride height, the stiffness, and it's all bolt-on. The front end bolts up top, the system comes down and around, and you'll notice that it bolts to the way old leaf springs are. This is a pretty decent kit. It's got one major flaw to it, and that is the steering gearbox. You can see right here. This gearbox is poorly designed, definitely not engineered right to be able to handle the extra width and turning these big tires, and it wears out quick. So the options were to replace it and find a used one, because they will not sell you a new one, and I wouldn't want to replace it with the same thing anyway. So what I did was sourced an RXV gearbox with twin tie rods, because this setup is for 2 tie rods. The TXT gearbox is a single tie rod and then uses a connecting rod underneath to connect the 2 wheels, and this setup just wasn't built for that, and it would have been a lot of extra fabricating to make that work. So I opted to go with the RXV, which worked out really well. So I wanted to show you something real quick. Right here in the center where this hole is where the old gearbox was, and if you look at my steering arm, you can see the angle of that was way off, and those knuckles were almost maxed out. So I moved it over, and now we're sitting perfect. We got a nice angle to it. It steers really smooth. All I had to do was build a new bracket. Right there you can see it. It's all welded in place, and it's also serviceable. 2 bolts, the whole rack and pinion comes out. You still have access to the A-arms, which is nice. So if you get a kit similar to this and you want to modify your gearbox, go ahead and get yourself an RXV used gearbox, and you can go ahead and mount that in there and mount it up real nice. It sits real tight. Now, one of the things I did have to do that was a problem is, if you notice the control arm, the upper control arm, let me get this wheel turning, you can see the tie rod comes out when you turn the vehicle, and right here we got plenty of clearance. Well, before we did not, and that was because, you can see because of the light, this upper rod was down here connected in line with the other rod, similar to the one on the bottom. It was all flat, and when this back side of the A-arm was down here, it would hit. So I cut it, spliced in a 1/4 inch piece of steel, flat stock, shaped it, and now we have a nice factory looking design. Let me get this wheel out of the way, we can see some light, and you can see it looks real nice. Doesn't affect the geometry whatsoever, because we didn't change any angles. We just raised it up, and now we have plenty of clearance for my tie rods. And that, my friend, is a badass golf cart front end. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I'm going to get into episode 2 and start dialing in the back end and tuning the motor. In the meantime, I'm going to go for a little test drive and rip this thing down the street, see if I can't piss off some neighbors.